Despite heavy deployment of security forces, the violence has not completely subsided. Now, a fresh flashpoint in Senapati district has prompted the centre to significantly alter its security strategy in the state. Following recent clashes outside an Assam rifle camp, the CRPF has deployed nearly 100 bulletproof vehicles in Manipur. Security personnel have now been instructed to move only in protected convoys in sensitive areas. 2 specialized CoBRA battalions have been deployed for jungle operations with a mandate to dismantle bunkers and secure vulnerable routes. These are not routine adjustments, they reflect the seriousness of the security situation on the ground. But Manipur's challenge do not exist in isolation. Beyond India's eastern border, Myanmar is witnessing one of the most dramatic internal conflict in its modern history. The military junta is steadily losing ground to ethnic armed groups and pro-democracy forces, while reports suggest hundreds of Myanmar soldiers have crossed into neighboring countries. For India, this is not merely a crisis across the border, it has direct consequence for the security of the northeast. Chinese are also present. The collapse of the state authority in Myanmar threatens to increase cross-border movement of armed groups, weapons, refugees, while insurgent organizations operating along the frontier could find new opportunities to regroup. Adding another layer of complexity is China's growing influence. Beijing today enjoys significant leverage with several armed groups inside Myanmar. With instability in Myanmar growing, Chinese influence across India's eastern neighborhood and continuing unrest in Manipur security. Experts believe that India is facing a far more complex challenge and simple law and order problem. It is an evolving regional security landscape. The question is no longer just about restoring peace in the state. It is also about whether the unrest in the state is becoming part of a much larger geopolitical challenge unfolding across India's eastern frontier. For example, the Assam Rifles has been attacked by a breakaway faction of a Naga group. And on all these issues, we are going to discuss what is the implication for Manipur of all the developments that is taking place across the border. On this issue, I am joined by Brijesh Pandey, input editor of News9. I am also joined by Dr. P.K. Mishra.
Jai.
Thank you, sir. General Sudhakarji and Suhas Chakma. But first to you, Brijesh, today we are doing 2 things. First, this unprecedented attacks on Assam Rifles, which have taken place after years. Not a blockade, not a pushback, not of women surrounding them, but attacks on them. One, and secondly, the sort of article that Suhas wrote really fired my imagination, the sort of Chinese influence in Chittagong hill tracks and the sort of instability that is being witnessed in Rakhine state and its entire impact on Northeast.
Well, Karthikeya, I think one of the biggest problem which the government's approach towards solving the problem in Manipur has been that it has kind of tried to box us into thinking that it's just a law and order problem, or like it is a fight between 2 ethnicity and it is completely related to that. Now it's 3, but it's like completely related to first Kuki and Meitei and now Kuki versus Naga. And the fact of the matter is that that any fight or any instability in the northeastern states, especially Manipur and others, cannot have a localized impact. It has to have an impact of what is happening in Myanmar. It has to have the kind of, the growing power or the growing influence which China is exercising. And there is no way you are going to or divide the 2 or take one in its isolation. It just doesn't work like that. The fact of the matter is that, Assam Rifle has been facing a lot of blowback. Now, the things have come to a situation where, snipers are being deployed to take shots at the forces. And now CRPF has to get, 100 bulletproof vehicles and now you have to move into convoy. I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't, it gives a very good picture or a sense that, that we are in a commanding position per se. Okay. I think it's an extremely scary situation.
Okay. General Sudhakarji, Assam Rifles being targeted by a breakaway Naga faction operating from Myanmar. Can you unmute yourself?
I'm audible, Karthikeya. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon to you. Thank you for inviting me for your special show. I totally, fully agree with what Brijesh has said. It's an unfortunate part, but I only hope and pray that certain remedial measures will be undertaken by the relevant agencies. The broader or the larger picture is there is a bigger game plan in place. And the bigger game plan, so far I always used to say, as per my analysis, there is an intersection of sphere of interest, intersection between 3 very major components. One is the United States, the second is the China, and the third is the Islamic fundamentalism. Now, since Manipur is coming into the foreground, the Islamic fundamentalism actually gets takes a backseat towards Bangladesh side, and however, USA and China remain in the main stage. But in the instant case, I have been studying since morning. What is actually coming out is a very shocking and scary kind of a development taking place. There is a big game plan undertaken by China and its support to the Tatmadaw. Tatmadaw is the military wing of the government, and they also have a thing called as Myanmar Defense Alliance, some army, NDMAA, who actually takes control, who are the founding, the Kachin army, also the founding member of, they have a Chin army, and now they are collaborating with Arakan army. There is a huge complex kind of a dynamics which is evolving in past 1.5 to 2 years, where China has gone absolutely hammer over tongue and trying to do couple of things in order to establish its predominance in Myanmar. Be mindful of the fact Myanmar is a country which had a pro-democracy kind of movement during 88, 87, 88. There had a large number of people who got killed, and the Western alliances, they had imposed very serious sanctions, economic and also otherwise economic, non-economic sanctions. Their leanings had changed to China, but China came down so heavily, put them into such a kind of a trap, not only the debt trap of everything, diplomatic trap, they put them into constitutional trap and the political trap. So virtually Myanmar could not do anything or move anything without the concurrence, explicit approval of China. That was the year in 2004 where a top secret document was written by a Burmese officer in Burmese language, and which has been referred to, showing you through your camera. This is the book, The Great Game East of Littner.
In fact, I've read this. I've read this book. It's a. Let me take opening. It's a very good book. In fact, it reminded me of this
Page
book.
number 306. It brings out how the current strategy of Myanmar has shifted to America simply to gain the IMF loan, World Bank loan.
Okay.
And
General, I'll come back to you. Just let me take opening comments from everyone, sir. Just let me take opening comments from everyone. Dr. Mishra, why is Assam rifle being targeted? Why aren't we taking enough steps so that these breakaway factions dare to target AR, which is the pivotal force in Northeast?
Karthika, I can tell that it is not only at Assam Rifle Camp at Nagatapu, which was attacked by ladies and other people, particularly by the group of one of the group of NSCN-IM. It may be the Eastern Flank Group, I go back what Mr. Ajit Doval has stated. He has warned the NSA of Myanmar, particularly in the BIMSTEC meeting. He has clearly stated that Myanmar is keeping this NSCN Kaplan, so are also NSCN Eastern Flank groups, and they are interfering in Manipur. And he has told that this should not be allowed. And Mr. Ajit Doval has very categorically warned the NSA of Myanmar. What I can tell that, it is not only at Nagathapu camp of Assam Rifle which was attacked, and few vehicles were burnt. You go back to 6th July, what has happened in Ukhrul? It was another attack on Assam Rifle. It's all, that is what CRP has now taken this lesson to have so many numbers of bulletproof vehicles, because it's very difficult to have movement in those areas on foot without taking cover. But I can tell you what is happening in Kamjong border. Go back to boundary pillar 101, 102 and 100. And it's all happening because the militants from Myanmar, they are penetrating, and several times they have attacked in Kamjong in those areas. And I can well tell you, Assam Rifle should learn a lesson from both of the attacks, and they have to be very careful, as CRPF has already They are getting a lot of women constables who are also 100 BP vehicles, and also, you see, we have 320 companies of CRPF in Manipur. Nowhere in none of the states we have 320 companies. And this is what is in Manipur. We cannot control Myanmar border. You see, the China inroads, it is not only there in Chittagong hill tracts. They have also, you see, they are also penetrating, and they are penetrating due to this deteriorating condition of the deteriorating situation of Myanmar. So we have to be very careful for the Chinese axis, because what China is going to play, our northeast is boiling. One axis is Myanmar, the other axis is Bangladesh. Chittagong hill tracts, again it is coming up.
I'll come to that. I'll come to that. I'll come to that. Suhas,
Yes, yes.
I'll come to that. Suhas, you wrote that article. Let's talk about the Myanmar conundrum. Do most of the experts fail to see what's happening in Northeast because they start excluding other areas? Do we need to broaden our understanding and relocate Manipur in the larger geopolitical context? Like Chittagong Hill Tract, Rakhine State, Presbyterian churches operating, those foreigners who got caught in the northeastern border.
Mizoram border.
Yes.
I think we have to get the bigger picture. The bigger picture is how could an institution like Tatmadaw, the Burmese junta, could collapse. If we understand how did they collapse, then I think it's easier for us to understand the situation. They collapsed simply because there is a concurrence between the Americans as well as the Chinese on the issue of Myanmar, and that is to destabilize the Myanmar. So once the Myanmar military junta has collapsed, so it's basically every armed group taking over certain territories and operating there. And now, when this operation took place, how is it possible that certain armed groups take over the entire country? Who provided the arms? Obviously, it is not the government of India. So it has to be done either by the Chinese or the Americans, or the Chinese providing the arms, Americans we are providing the funds to such an extent that the junta collapsed in a year and a half time, and they are not going to get back the territories. So who is the most affected party of this falling of Myanmar? It's the government of India, because of the territories, the northeast and insurgencies which we have. And now in this process, what we have is basically we have managed conflict. So we have, for example, ceasefire agreements, suspension of operations with number of groups. So we do not have an active conflict, but the risk when you have certain armed groups in this type, then they could actually get activated very easily. And I think the recent attacks on the Assam Rifles is a reflection of that. And now, for example, if we look at it, in say, for example, Chittagong Hill Tracts. Chittagong Hill Tracts is not an isolated place. It is part of Bangladesh. So we have the entire Bangladesh, which is destabilized. And because of the destabilization of Bangladesh, we have actually now the Pakistanis who have entered, including the Chittagong Hill Tracts and etc. It's known to everybody. And I think what we have done so far is we have been, I think, not taking the proactive actions. We have been basically reacting to the developments. In fact, if you look at it, say, for example, last 2 days back, the Chinese Foreign Ministry had issued a warning saying that the marriages in Bangladesh cannot be undertaken by the Chinese nationals. Otherwise, they will be arrested under the trafficking charges and etc. Way back in 2024, in January, I had written that from the Chittagong Hill Tracts, thousands of girls, including thousands of the Chakma girls, they are married off to the Chinese. So I, at that point of time, had written that the Chittagong Hill Tracts is almost becoming little China in Bangladesh through marriages. And it is continuing to such an extent that when the Chinese Foreign Ministry issues an advisory saying that this kind of marriages are taking place, it means it has reached a proportion which nobody in India actually knows. And that's why I wrote the article. So I think we have to understand that because of the situation in Pakistan, say for example, we are not involved in whatever happening in Pakistan, but Pakistanis would like to believe that everything is done by the Indians. So once they believe everything is done by the Indians, they will come back to the Chittagong Hill Tracts and through the northeast, and we should not be surprised. actually the insurgency which is dormant or which has been dormant for the last 10, 15 years actually get their new lease of life very soon. And it would depend on actually how the situation in Bangladesh develops. So we have failed Myanmar, failed Bangladesh, because even if it's stable at this point in time, Bangladesh, it's failed because if you do not allow the Army League, there is going to be some kind of massive uprising from the citizens at some point of time. So when you have failed states on the Eastern Front, that becomes more precarious than the Western Front. But our attention usually is that only Eastern, Western Front is important. I would say Eastern Front is more vulnerable. And now, final point: if the China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh economic corridor takes place, I mean, up to the Chittagong tracks and the with the Mongla port being given to the Chinese, what is left? Only the chicken neck, and it's so vulnerable. So I
Chicken
think
Neck,
we
Chinese are doing a project in Chicken Neck, 22 kilometers from the border. They have given the 7,000 crore rupee loan to Bangladesh, and instead of us, they have given project to the Chinese, and the PLA's engineering core is part of that Power China company, and they'll be operating from there.
Absolutely.
Chicken's
and I
neck.
think we have become so vulnerable in the northeast or Eastern Front. We are not actually taking it seriously because the mentality is
Wait a minute,
not
Swaz.
Indian.
You concurred with Swaz on something?
Oh, absolutely. 200%. I think it's an extremely very well put by Suhas about the new theater of, I won't say war, but a new theater of concern. The biggest concern right now is not the western border, but the eastern border. And still I would say, and the irony of the situation is that it is being seen in a very limited area, localized area, while it should have been, encompassing every situation and, the government acting accordingly. People are talking about Myanmar, people are talking about the deteriorating situation in Myanmar and how it is fueling, both powers, America and China is doing. China is literally, in India's backyard. And the fact of the matter is that, the kind of response you see is always reactive and never, preemptive as far as the government of India is concerned.
General Sudhakarji, is Eastern theatre a bigger concern now than the Western theatre, sir?
Certainly. The issue, you have to join the dots, because if you study things in isolation in matters related to security, it gives you a very lopsided kind of a picture. So if you join the dots of past 2 years or couple of years in the past, and now bring it to here, I would agree with all the very distinguished speakers. One thing needs to be taken care of. There is a shunt. Now, what is the threat to India? That we need to understand. We have Act East policy, we know it very well. We have a trilateral highway coming up, 1,700 kilometers, out of which 170 kilometers is left now. But people tend to forget that there is a major strategic project which India initiated way back in 2008-9. Kaladan project. That is a masterpiece project. It actually kills multiple birds of stones with targets or the oncoming projectiles with one shot. So that Kaladan project, lot of money has actually gone in, 539 kilometers of maritime route. Thereafter, you have the Sitwe port has come up. Then you have the Kaladan River, 158 kilometers. Everything is tickety-boo. Things are moving. Trials have been carried out. Then you go to a place called Paletwa. From Paletwa to Kaletwa, there is a distance of 50 kilometers. The road has been developed by our own people. And what is left is 50 odd kilometers from Kaletwa to a place called as Zoripuin. Zoripuin is on the Mizoram border. And from Mizoram side to Aizawl, there is a place on the national highway, it is called Lanjodo or something like this. That distance of 100 kilometers is done. So there is a balance of distance of about 50 kilometers which needs to be focused. And that is caught in a conflict zone. Now, what is the conflict? That is between the Chin province and the Rakhine province. So between the Chin, there is a group of people who have come into prominence in past. I'm sure Subhash would bear me out. These are called as Kumi People's Army. Kumi People's Army and Arakan Army, they are at daggers drawn. Now, Kumi people have come into a very violent stage of asserting themselves in this area of Paletwa. And now this 50 kilometers cannot be done by India. So that is one Kaladan project. The second project that I'm talking of is when you talk about the trilateral. The complete trilateral is done. It's 170. Latest figure I've just got now is 120 kilometers are left. Where is it actually stretching between Tamu or More? The one is to the India side, the other is to the Myanmar side. From there, it goes up to 120 kilometers. It crosses Tindwin River. These are the two stretches where our very doctrinal concept of Act East policy is getting impacted. So how does it matter? Why do we want to go to East? And where do we want to go to East? You see, we have maritime connectivity. There are three things which are of relevance: border management, security, connectivity. If these three things are actually handled by the government of India at strategic level on, I would say, double down effort, then I'm sure we'll be able to achieve miles in just about next 1 to 2 years' time. The security situation is unfortunately turning very hostile. Myanmar is not what we thought it to be, and we have made a strategic move. The president of Myanmar came on a first visit to India. We have now extended the hand of friendship with multiple stakeholders. When you talk about the security architecture today in Myanmar, you have Tatmadaw, you have NEG, you have the People's Democratic Party, you also have 26 conglomerate of different groups, ethnic groups, you call them as EAO.
Yes.
So EAOs, they are fighting with each other. Unless we engage with the relevant stakeholder, prioritize our effort, I think we'll be missing the bus.
Okay, I'll take a closing comment from PK Mishra. So you wait. Suhas, you in that article said Chinese are getting married to tribals in Chittagong Hill Tract. How is that happening?
Chinese had a long plan, and in fact, had this Hasina government not fallen, Chittagong Hill Tracts by now would have been given as the tourism project to the government of China. And I did the research at that point of time. So the Chinese have an interest in the CHT, and their whole interest in the economic corridor, etc., is to ensure that the government of India doesn't have access to the Kaladan port. So we are caught in different kind of with actors, whether it's the Khumi army or the Arakan army, and etc. And in the entire process, what we have to bear in mind is that the GFI of Bangladesh, they always crop up insurgent groups in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, and especially of the communities who have links in both sides. Say Kumis, they are in Chittagong Hill Tracts, so they have been operating there, and they are also in Paletawa. So exactly like the Chins, they will try to do it, and now the situation, is deteriorating day by day. I think what we have to bear in mind is that we cannot. I completely agree with Sudhakarji that if we do not engage with all the stakeholders, and if we do not undertake a clear-cut policy, not only with dealing with this group, with the government of Bangladesh, the GFI, I think we are going to, as Sudhakarji had said, miss the bus. And China is not the country it was in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, when they did not fund the insurgents.
Absolutely.
And today, all the arms are supplied by the Norinco.
Absolutely. Your closing comment, Mr. Mishra?
Yes, Kartika, I can well tell you that I really agree that we have to give more stress on Eastern Front, in our Eastern Front, rather than the Western Front. Things are pretty bad. You heard about the Chittagong Hill Tracts. I can even tell that even those Chatmas who are there in Chittagong Hill Tracts, also few of them are getting married to China. And the penetration of China, particularly during this deteriorating situation in Myanmar, it is maximum. And whatever weapons also it came to Manipur, I can well tell you that most of them are Chinese weapons. There were few weapons from USA also, which were caught by Assam Rifles and CRPF in Manipur. So the situation in Kamjong and more or less in Myanmar, and particularly in Mizoram, Myanmar border is very tense. I give preference to Mizoram because Mizoram border deployment, which is the deployment is on hilltops only, whereas when you come down from the hilltop towards the plain side, it is all totally blank. That is how this USHF and Ukrainians, they crossed from that particular point to Myanmar. I have gone and visited that point. Things have gone to that extent that other country people, they are coming and they are crossing over to Myanmar with drones. They have crossed with drones. So we have to be very careful of Mizoram border rather than Myanmar border also, and also for Bangladesh border. Things are pretty bad. The relation between BGP is getting very worse. from day to day. This is the problem I
Okay.
can see.
I really thank all of you for making time. But, I thought this was a very pertinent discussion we needed to organize, especially contextualizing security issues of states like Manipur from a bigger context. If I even broaden it, I see it from what's happening in Chabahar, what's happening in Bangla, the Teesta project, and as Sudhakarji pointed out, the Kaladan project. If we look at it in the totality, hostile government, hostile states, hostile interests, and enveloping a democratic India. I thank all of you for joining me, and this is all I had in this edition of On Point.
Amid a fragile ceasefire, stakeholders take on the tough questions.
Was Israel surprised by the asymmetric warfare which Iran started conducting?
Yes, I think it was a kind of surprise, the level of savagery.
Why has Iran stopped the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz?
So we have to defend ourselves.
Like never before, On Point with Kartikeya Sharma, decoding Hormuz, Kharg, and the ceasefire.
What is the future of peace in West Asia?
I hope that they got their lesson.
That are supposed to give a chance. We stay ready in case it doesn't work.
Every war has a political objective.
The voices that matter, only on News 9.
A crisis that has shaken the foundation of our education system and left over 22 lakh students in a state of absolute despair.
The NEET UG 2026 paper leak is no longer just a story about a stolen question paper.
We're looking at the DNA of a national shame.
The rate card for the leaked NEET paper originated in Pune.